And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining for this Tropics After Dark, presented by Malone Roofing Services. As always, we do appreciate our sponsors and our partners during this season. Malone has been with us for about 2 or 3 years now, so definitely appreciate them. Visit their website if you have a chance. If you have any roofing needs, their website is there in the title. So once again, we do appreciate Malone. We are tracking Tropical Depression Fred currently still. Good evening, Sarah. Good to see you on here. Appreciate you for joining. So right now we do still have tropical depression out there, and it's hanging on for dear life, like we talked about earlier. Right, there was not, it didn't look like much on there. It still doesn't look like much on satellite, although we are seeing a little bit of convection starting to bubble up just a bit, and so that kind of shows us that it's trying to come back a little bit. And the models do indicate that we were going to see this occur. It was going to get torn apart by the Hispaniola, and then as it gradually moved to the west-northwest, we were going to see it start to try and get its act back together. And that's what's happening tonight, on the satellite. We can see that. So right now, it's still 35 miles per hour. They're calling it a depression, but the National Hurricane Center did note that it's kind of on the cusp of becoming maybe a tropical storm again. And that's probably, if it's going to occur, it's probably going to happen as we go into tomorrow. And then, heading into this weekend. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. And something that's going on right now too is sometimes you get a bubble up of convection, around here. Maybe you'll have a bubble up over here, down here, and wherever the low level center is right now, it's obviously not a very well developed low level center. But sometimes when you get convection up here, it kind of like tries to pull the storm north a little bit, and then if you get a bubble up down here, it'll kind of try and nudge it south a little bit. So right now, it's pretty typical of these systems. You kind of get wobbles back and forth a little bit, and so it's very erratic right now, and that's why the models are struggling with this. We'll see models shift a little bit east, we'll see them shift a little bit to the west, and when you have a struggling system that's not very well developed, that is what you see right now, and we still don't have a very solid system. You don't need me to tell you that. Look how this thing looks right now, right? Not very impressive. But it could get impressive later, and that's something that we just got to keep monitoring as we go forward here, because as much as the models are struggling with a direction and where it could make landfall, trust me, they're struggling with intensity as well. With this, in the end. So, it could be a little bit stronger than what's forecast. Could be just a little weak thing moving into the Gulf. And we hope it's going to be weak, moving forward. So this is a look at the tropical track from the cone of uncertainty from the National Hurricane Center. It hasn't changed much, it really hasn't in the last day or so. We still expect this storm to become back. This little S right here, it becomes a tropical storm again, potentially overnight tonight, and then heading into tomorrow. We'll see that west-northwest motion continue, and then we should start to see a little bit of a hook here by the time we get into Saturday afternoon and evening. And still expecting right now 50 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center has it right here at this point. We're still expecting a tropical storm getting into the eastern Gulf of Mexico and potentially making landfall here along the panhandle of Florida. This is kind of the center line at where they have it going. Go switch over to this thing right here, and this will kind of tell you a little bit more detail as far as what we're looking at. So let me zoom in. This kind of shows that line. And, they have it at 50 miles per hour, gusting up to about 65. That would be 7 p.m. on the 15th. What is that? That's Sunday. Yeah, so we're still looking at Sunday night. And this would be right around, east of Apalachicola. And is that Carabel? Apologies if it's not pronounced correctly there. There's Dog Island. And so that is around where we're looking at the potential to see some landfall there. It would be somewhere, like I said, just east of Apalachicola. And, coming inland just west of Tallahassee there is where the center line would be located. But, it's important to stress here, the weaker this system is as it heads up in this direction right here, that's from last night, the weaker the storm is as it comes in this way, it's more likely to kind of drift a little bit west more and then hook north before, that happens. So the weaker it is coming through the Florida Straits, I think the more west we might see it come. If it does develop a little bit sooner, it might feel that weakness a little bit quicker and maybe hook east here and go across the Florida Peninsula. So there are still a couple of scenarios in play here. The track that would be most worrisome, I think, is that if it would take a more westward track this way, you got a lot of water in here and less interaction with the west coast of Florida. So if it gets away from Florida and gets into this open Gulf area before, hooking to the north a little bit, I think that would be the more concerning track, to worry about here, because again, it would have a lot of Gulf to work with, a lot of warm water, and not as much interaction with Florida. So although it might be weak to start, and that might be what would make it drift more west, the long term coming to the north here, it would probably have a better chance to strengthen in some open water there. So the couple of things to look at there as we move forward. A track obviously hooking this way a little bit sooner would obviously keep the storm over land the majority of the time, but of course create nasty rainy conditions for Florida. All right, so somebody's going to get rain. We're not going to get out of that. We're going to have some rainfall with this system, but I think the more west it goes and gets itself in the open area there, in the open Gulf, it might be able to blossom a little bit more than, if it did. And how you doing, Sarah from Pensacola? Yep, awesome area. JJ, you say Pensacola too. I just got back from Pensacola, a couple of weeks ago now. I almost succumbed to heat stroke. It wasn't a funny situation. I posted it on the page. It was hot on that Sunday. I think it was a Sunday, and I was stupid. I didn't take the old precautions I give tips about all the time to stay hydrated and all. And man, I almost passed out there. I had to lay down for a while. I had fever into the overnight hours. It was crazy. But overall, it was a fun trip. It was great. Pensacola Beach was awesome. The water was awesome there, and the water was great. We didn't have any issues. It was just hot, and be careful out there when it's like that. So yeah, anyway, Pensacola has the chance to see some impact from this, especially if we go more to the west. Now, if you get a track around this area, Pensacola is going to be on the good side of it, so shouldn't be too bad around that area. So a lot to be determined still with this. Like I've been mentioning the last couple of days, it's really going to depend on, let's see, what this does and what it looks like moving forward. Right now, it's still not looking overly impressive, obviously. If you look at where they have it kind of pegged as far as the the location of the center, we're looking just north of the Cuban eastern coast. There is kind of where they have it. So they have the center somewhere around here is what the National Hurricane Center has it. So if you were to just look at the satellite, you'd say, well, the center is probably down here somewhere, right? But it's not. They have it way up here. So we're not seeing convection wrapping around is what I'm saying. We don't have that donut kind of tropical look to this thing. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not a very well developed system still, which is a good thing. But again, it could become a little bit better developed moving forward. Now, looking at a couple of things that may hinder it in the meantime, you see this big spin right here, large kind of spin. That's an upper level low. And that's going to cause some wind shear from this direction. So some southwest wind shear. Here's a look at Fred right here. This low is going to be moving in this direction as Fred is moving in this direction. So if that low gets a little bit away from Fred, it might be able to have a little bit more conducive environment. But right now, it's going to deal with a little bit of wind shear there from the southwest. So that's what's going to hinder it in the near term. And that's why the models aren't really overly aggressive with this. Now, as far as the atmosphere and the dry air, right? Remember, we were tracking the dry air just a couple of days ago right in front of the storm, and it was getting wrapped around it. But now if you look at the atmosphere, here's that word, it's very moist right now in the Gulf. And so I don't know if dry air, there's a little bit down here, but I don't know if dry air is going to be the biggest issue with this. Land interaction and maybe some wind shear might be the bigger issues now moving forward, as I don't think dry air is going to be huge, for the storm moving forward here. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be moving again this direction, could squeeze between Florida and Cuba and then start to hook somewhere. And that'll be, interesting to see where that happens and what condition it's in as it sneaks between Florida and Cuba here. Let's see. All right, yeah, Alberto, you're right. Going to be a moist weekend for someone, right? A lot of rainfall. And speaking of that, Alberto, yeah, here's a look at some of the rainfall that we could see. Good segue there, right? So these oranges and yellows, this is where, remember, if the track comes in somewhere in here, or I don't know, somewhere in this area close to it, remember the eastern side of the tropical system is going to be where you're going to see that rainfall. These orange areas, 6 to 10 inches, yellows 4 to 6 inches. So these yellows and oranges would be the most or the heaviest rain. It's not too bad. I mean, we're not seeing any of those reds and pinks on here. So just something to keep in mind there. It does not look like this storm is going to be one that stalls out and just dumps rain over and over again in certain areas. It does look like we're going to see some movement from it. But with that, on the eastern side, we're going to have these bands that are going to be pushing in. And so we're going to see some rain around Florida. I don't think a lot of Florida is going to get out of this because, I mean, as far as rainfall goes, you're going to be on the eastern side of the system. So keep that in mind. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. The stars there, very, very much appreciated. So, there's a look at that. And then if you look at the GFS model now, and this is from, let me see if I can reload this and see if we have the overnight model. We might have a little bit we can look at. But let's move this forward here. You can kind of see there's the wave, and it starts, you see a low pressure right there tomorrow evening, and then you kind of move this forward. I don't think we're going to have enough frames here. But you see how erratic. See, here's a low here, and then it's pegged up here. It's all moving all over the place. And then it starts to kind of develop a little bit more, but we don't have enough frames to go forward with that. So let's go back to the 6 p.m. one. And then the GFS, really, look, here's a low right there. And then look what it does. It's not very strong at all, right? It doesn't even form really much at all, and it moves in there. So, like I've been mentioning, the models are not overly aggressive with this. Again, the conditions are not perfect. We are in early August right now, or kind of early to almost mid-August now. The conditions don't really become ripe and much more conducive until we really got to get to the mid and the end of August into September and October. Actually, conditions are more favorable at that point. We still got some upper level lows in the Gulf right now, some dry air to deal with. So thankfully, hopefully that's going to keep this storm at bay and it won't intensify too much, because it does have some things going against it as far as the odds. Now, these are the models that the National Hurricane Center kind of used to let's say, kind of help to form their 10 p.m. update. And, we have their official, if you look at this right here, let me see here, this let's see, I think it's this black one here. I think that's their official one. It's either that one or this one. I don't know why there's two of them, but it's one of these. I think it's the one on the left. Anyway, there's a few more models, and they even mentioned this, that their official track is a little bit east of a lot of the Ensemble models. So you see there's a lot of models over here. I'm not sure, they're discounting those a little bit. So they've kept the track pretty steady, and this kind of gives you a better view of that. This is their official cone at 10 p.m., and look at some of the different models. They're kind of all over the place, right? But you see a few of them are west of their official track, so I think those are indicating, though, a weaker system, kind of drifting in that direction. So I don't know. We'll just have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. This is a tough one because it's actually easier to forecast stronger storms and stronger hurricanes because they have a solid core, and the models mean a lot more, and the upper level winds play in. They just interact a lot with more consistency than something that's just very disorganized out there, just very disorganized and just has a mind of its own right now. And that's why it's hard in the long term to kind of figure out where this is going. And so you use the cone and just say, look, it's probably going to be somewhere in this area, but we just don't have the technology yet to be able to narrow it down exactly right now. I know it frustrates people, but it's just hard to do. So that's kind of the latest on what we have. Fred, how you doing? Cole from Tallahassee, good to see you. And then behind it, look, we go back out here. This is Invest 95, and this will be a similar track to Fred probably. And this is going to be another long tracker coming into the west. So that'll be another one that we have to watch. But right now we'll focus in on Fred. Here's a summary of it. This point right here is 50 miles per hour, and that's potentially on what is it? Sunday at 7 p.m. And it looks like we could, let me take off these model tracks. It looks like we could see a track that goes east of Apalachicola and kind of right to the west of Tallahassee. As a 50 mile per hour tropical storm, it's not going to create devastating impacts, obviously. It'll be windy, it'll be rainy, there'll be a little bit of water rise on the coast, but overall I think everybody should be okay. So, I think a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, if that's the worst it's going to get, I think that's okay. And we'll take that, right? Something coming in the Gulf. Once you get to that 70, getting into Category 1 hurricane strength, then you start to get a little bit of damage, some power outages. I think with a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, I think the power outages will probably be kept to a minimum if we do get that. There may be a few, but we can deal with that, right? Like I've been saying, Gulf Coast, we are professional storm, I don't want to say storm chasers, but we know hurricanes and we know tropical storms right now. And a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, it's not going to cause any huge issues. Yes, there'll be some water rise along the coast, and some areas could get some, some water moving in, right on the immediate coastline. You can get some rainfall and you can get some wind, but we will take a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm close to the middle of August any day of the week, right now. So something to, always look at the bright side of things and the encouraging part of things and be optimistic. That's not going to be too bad if that is what this ends up being in the end. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Let's see here. We have some questions. Panama City Marie, thanks for joining tonight. Appreciate you on here. Let's see here. Also, I have to go to Baton Rouge to bring my daughter to college from where? I didn't see that, Angela. I didn't see you if you asked where that was. I mean, Louisiana's going to be fine from this, so that wouldn't be an issue. It's very damp. Yeah, damp is a better choice than moist. You're right. It's a better word. Let's see. Open-minded land interaction matters. It's gonna hit Bermuda. Bermuda, JJ. That's gonna be tough. Yeah, sun doesn't play. Sarah, you're right. That was rough. When will your next update be? Tomorrow? Jerry, I'm not sure. I mean, I try to sometimes do like a 4 p.m. and then like a 10 p.m. Tropics After Dark. So maybe around those times. Tomorrow, same thing. Let's see. Beautiful beach area in Carabel. Never been to that area. Never have been to that particular beach. All right. So that is the latest on Fred. Tropical depression Fred right now. It's the National Hurricane Center says it's maybe right on the cusp of becoming a tropical storm again. I don't know what they're seeing that tells them that, but we'll trust them. It's close to being a tropical storm again. It doesn't look very impressive on satellite. So tomorrow and going into Saturday will be big days for the storms because we're going to see it moving to the west-northwest through the Florida Straits, and we'll see. Look, the models are not indicating that anything is going to Jordan S. Oceanic Heat Content. Very warm water coming in where it's going. We're talking 84 to 87 degrees probably. So the waters are very warm. Where it's headed. But like I mentioned yesterday, warm water is not just the variable for this. It's got to have good upper level winds. Land interaction plays into it. So thankfully that warm water is not just the only thing that they need, or else we'd have Cat 4s and 5s every week in the tropics. So, so something to keep in mind. Jake asked, do we foresee forming tornadoes? I mean, anytime you have a tropical system, you can sometimes have those isolated bands that move in on the eastern side especially, and sometimes you can get a quickly spawned tornado. Sometimes there are water spouts that come in, on the coast, and very quickly they'll start to dissipate, but they can do a little bit of damage. So you can always have some sort of little tornado or, something in there. They're usually pretty weak, but you can have them with a tropical system always. So that's the latest on Fred. I'll continue to keep you all updated on the page. Thanks for joining tonight, and we'll do these live videos as we move forward here to potential landfall. But thank you guys for joining tonight. Share this video if you'd like to. Appreciate it. This is Tropics After Dark. It's sponsored by Malone Roofing Services. Again, we do appreciate our partners. Malone's been with us, like I said, for a couple of years. And stay with the page, y'all, and I'll continue to keep you all updated as we track tropical depression. What did I say last night? Tropical depression number Fred. So